Hello, this is Baron von Richthof, and I'm going to give you a little mini guide on how to play Nasus. I've actually picked Nasus this game, one because he works very well with my team comp, but then also because the enemy team picked Talon, and I find that Nasus is an extremely effective counter to Talon, as I'll get into it a little bit later. For my runes, you will see I have armor pen reds. My quints are going to be movement speed, yellows are flat armor, and blues are going to be flat magic resist. Now, the flat armor and magic resist really help you out in lane, particularly against aggressive laning champions. You will be able to negate a lot of their damage, and then if you have some nice regen, you can really control the lane well. While the movement speed gives you some nice utility, and you don't really need any other quints there as other champions might for damage output or for survivability and such, because Nasus generally is okay in both of those categories. But Nasus, one of his issues is that it is somewhat easy to kite Nasus, and if you're able to kite out the ultimate or just kite his damage, then very quickly he's not nearly as effective as he normally would be. So I do have the movement speed there. That'll help me out a lot, both in safe laning and farming, but then also in team fights later. My masteries are going to be 0, 9, and 21. The little bit of defense, again, will help me in lane, give me some of that lane sustain. But the 21 points in utility, I don't really need the damage from the offensive. I don't really need the full defense, so the utility is definitely going to help me out a lot. Once again, get some more movement speed, get some mana regen to sustain in lane, but then the cooldown reduction is really going to help you a lot, with farming your Q and all of his abilities. And then the big thing with the utility tree is I can run Flash Teleport as that tanky top champion. Now, one of the disadvantages to running that Summoner Teleport is it does have a 5-minute cooldown, so when it's down, you are going to be at a serious disadvantage, and if you do have to waste it to go to lane, then you won't be able to provide that map control. But the difference between, running utility and not running utility for Teleport is when you have that utility spec, the cooldown drops to 250 seconds. That's just a little bit over 4 minutes, so you lose an entire minute off of that cooldown, so that's really going to help me out a lot. Now, I did pick Nasus to counter the enemy Talon, but unfortunately after they picked Talon, they did pick Kayle to kind of counter my Nasus back, and you don't see Kayle a lot, but really an aggressive laning champion. She does have some great ranged harass, so I really don't want to take much damage early on. I do have the cloth armor and the health pots still. That's really what I would run against Talon for the early armor and the early regen, but it will work effectively against Kayle as well, because I am going to want all of that health regen. Generally speaking, I'm going to be pretty defensive rather than staying up, and so unfortunately I won't be able to use Nasus' passive, which is a passive lifesteal for that extra regen. But because I'm able to kind of kite Kayle through the creeps, you do see she is taking a lot of damage from the creeps, and also from using her mana up. So fortunately, Shaco has been very aggressive so far in his jungle, and he has gone after the enemy's red buff, so an early gank here will help me out. We aren't going to be able to pick up this kill onto Kayle, but Kayle has definitely, lost that early lane advantage, and now I'm going to be a little bit more comfortable and able to use this opportunity to continue my farm, which is, for the opening point in the game, really all you want to do is Nasus play very defensive and be able to farm your abilities. Shaco's still going to be setting up, trying to be very aggressive top, or potentially waiting for Nocturne to come in. But I am going to take this advantage. I'm going to come in on Kayle, hopefully getting Shaco involved, but Nocturne's actually coming over from the golems, but with those Jack-in-the-Boxes we are able to deter that Nocturne from coming any further. But because Kayle is out of mana, I am able to comfortably farm up here, and I will recall after all these creeps are pushing. And that's really something you want to kind of work on, is understanding when are good times to recall. I am going to start moving top, but I am going to switch mid with Morgana, which is really something that we should have done from the beginning of the game because of my strength against Talon. I do have that lifesteal and the health potions, but then the early armor, I am at 70 armor right now. That is going to help me against Talon, and all of Talon's abilities deal physical damage, so while he's going to be trying to harass me, he's really not going to be dealing enough damage, so I can kind of sit up at the creep wave and farm effectively. As far as leveling abilities is concerned, I always get... well, it depends. You usually want to get Siphoning Strike first, if you're just going to be sitting in lane, because you want to farm up that Siphoning Strike as early as possible, and it is going to help you with farming. If you're in an aggressive lane, then you're going to need to put some more levels into Spirit Fire, because Spirit Fire will allow you to clear the minions very easily. It does have a nice burst, and then also the damage afterwards. But the issue with Spirit Fire is that it does have a large mana consumption rate if you're going to have to be using Spirit Fire a lot, whereas if you're just using Siphoning Strike, you can just use it all day and not worry about mana. But once you start using your other abilities very quickly, you're going to run out of mana as Nasus, because he doesn't have a very large mana pool. If you're not in a very aggressive lane and you know you can just farm, because in a solo lane you are going to get levels pretty quickly, you can put a number of levels into your Siphoning Strike. And Siphoning Strike, it used to change how much you would get on your Q added per level. As everyone knows, each time you get a kill with Siphoning Strike, you are going to add some bonus damage for the future times when you use it. But the benefit of leveling up Siphoning Strike early is primarily cooldown reduction, and you don't lose a lot of cooldown off of it, but it starts off at about 8 second cooldown, and it is going to go down to 4 seconds, and then you can get that even further with cooldown reduction. But I am going to work on farming, and because Talon did leave the lane, I am going to be aggressive with pushing, and that Siphoning Strike is going to do a lot of damage to those towers. And definitely try and go into the jungle whenever you can, especially if you're a solo mid, because a lot of times you can pick up those wraiths, and that's just free gold. I am going to start off with a Philo Stone and then into a Heart of Gold. Try and keep aware of what's going on in the fight, and so you do see here I am going to use my teleport in order to pick up this kill. I did use my ultimate, not really because I wanted to get a kill onto Ezreal. I didn't think I was going to be able to get a kill on Ezreal, but he was going to be attacking me that entire time while I was killing Alistar, so it was kind of a deterrent, and that's really what his ultimate is great for. It's both an offensive and it's a defensive move. It does kind of provide that counter-initiation as the enemy wants to try and get on you. But a lot of times with farm champions, you can go those gold per 5s, and really there's not going to be any downside to it. So I am going to go with the 2 gold per 5 items. It will give me a little bit of early regen, which will help me out in lane. But because I'm looking to farm for such a significant period of time, I will be able to use that gold to my advantage. And Talon actually did just recall, so I am going to push up on this tower, try and get some damage, and very quickly you can take a tower down as Nasus with that Siphoning Strike. I'm not going to be able to get the kill now, but I am going to lower it for a little bit later. But I am going to continue pushing up top. There's actually a fight going on mid, and so I am going to start looking down there in a second. I'm chasing Talon away. But I am going to push up this top lane, and now I'm going to look mid and start trying to teleport. Unfortunately, my teleport's a little bit slow, so we aren't able to pick up any kills. But I am able to push the enemy off of my team so that, they don't get any kills, and then we are able to pick up both that tower and that dragon. So, that teleport is really, it's not just a laning tool, it's not something you want to be looking at as just, okay, I want to be able to get back to my lane faster. If you're using teleport for that, then you're really not using it to its fullest. And there, I did help my team win that fight and, take some further targets. Now, because the enemy's mostly back, I am going to go top and try and push down this tower very quickly with Morgana, and we are able to get this with the creep wave and then also, the excellent damage. Talon is coming in onto Morgana, but, thanks to Morgana's snare and her shield, and then also my damage output, we are able to pick up that kill and then get out of there safely. Because there's a large creep wave pushing, you always want to keep the waves pushed and definitely look for farming opportunities. So I am going to come back up top, continue to farm a little bit. My teleport is going to be up in less than a minute, and then my team can hopefully grab some targets. But unfortunately, a couple of deaths going on. I am able to come down and pick up the Alistar kill. But I am just going to come back and passively farm. I do have that Spirit Fire. Now that I have the blue, I can use it a little more freely. For my next item, you do see I did go Merc Treads, and then I got an Aegis of the Legion. And Aegis, generally speaking, is a pretty nice tanking item as far as the stats it gives you, but where it's great and synergizes well with this team is that they have lots of initiation with Talon and with Nocturne and lots of physical damage. So I'm going to provide my team with all of that armor, and that's really going to help us out in fights, just being able to give my team that passive armor benefit. I did ping Baron because I was hoping to potentially go after Baron, because Nasus actually starting at level 11 can basically solo tank Baron if he has someone to deal damage for him. Unfortunately, we weren't able to pick up the kill on the Baron, because we gotten a little bit low in that fight, and then I did die. I didn't really expect the enemy to be there, but that's really a factor of not having enough wards. And you want to hope that your support picks up wards, but then everyone really needs to get wards, and it's everyone's duty. So unfortunately, we are going to lose this dragon, because we're not really in the best position to take it. But we are going to come out and pick up some kills, and Tristana's doing a very good job keeping out of the range of anyone. Unfortunately, Talon does pick up the Tristana kill, but we did get a couple of kills there in return. Because bottom is pushed, once again, I'm going to be looking to push it up. Always trying to get that farm as Nasus. And then also, by keeping the lanes pushed, when you win a fight, you're going to be able to then take a tower much more easily because your lanes are pushed. And if you lose a fight, then the enemy is going to have to push back into you. So just, kind of a common sense thing, but by pushing lanes aggressively, you are kind of putting yourself in a good position, and the enemy is forced to kind of be defensive, and that's really what you want to do. You want to put the enemy on the defensive. Now we are getting out here, and unfortunately Morgana does turn back into him. So I turned back in thinking we can pick up a kill on the Kale, but her ultimate is up, and unfortunately we did die there. Now there is something of a fight coming on up here, and I am going to chase up, try and get into position. There aren't any wards for me to teleport to, and now you see Talon and Nocturne are jumping on top of Morgana, but I am here to kind of act as that deterrent, which is really my role, so we are able to pick up the double kill. Alistar unfortunately does pick up the kill onto Morgana, but now because I know that Alistar isn't going to be dealing a lot of damage, and I have a significant amount of armor, I am going to kind of kite back and forth and tank Ezreal for Tristana to come in for those kills. Going back to my items, I did talk about the Aegis earlier, and a lot of times you want to go for a fast Triforce on Nasus because of all the stats that it gives you and the offensive capability. But really, you want to make sure your number one priority is to make sure that if you are supposed to be tanking for your team, that you're going to be able to do that first. So I did get some more defensive items. I did buy a Frozen Heart, once again provide my team with some aura. It will give me that nice armor benefit, but then also reduce the attack speed of my enemy. And because they have 4 people who are reliant on physical damage, once again, that'll help my team survive a little bit. I was trying to take Dragon here, but unfortunately not able to get it, but it is going to lead to a successful fight for us as the enemy's kind of out of position. Morgana and Sona, beautiful timing with their ultimates, able to pick up a couple of kills, and unfortunately Tristana did chase a little bit too far for Kale, but that's still a 4-for-2 engage, and we are going to take another tower and kind of hope to further our lead here. Once again, because the enemy doesn't really have any magic damage, I'm going to finish up that Triforce, really just synergizes well with Nasus, but then continue to buy some armor so that I can just be really aggressive in these fights and not have to worry about dying at all. Triforce as an item, Nasus, I am pretty fast because I do have those runes and masteries, and then the Triforce is going to give me some extra movement speed. But Nasus as a champion, because he's all melee range essentially, can be easy to kite if the enemy team has some slows or disables. So I really want that Merc Treads, and I am going to want that movement speed that the Triforce is going to give me. And then it'll also give me a slow, some HP, and then the Sheen proc synergizes very well with the Siphoning Strike. Unfortunately, the enemy team was able to seal our Baron. Our jungler wasn't able to get the smite, but really, when you have a Baron stolen or a Dragon stolen, it's kind of the fault of the entire team. And the enemy jungler did do a good job of smiting our Baron. But, smite damage, it's really overpowered by the damage of any number of champions. Cho'Gath's Rupture deals more damage than smite. Gragas, if he throws his barrels, can deal significantly more damage than smite. So it's really, as a team, you want to work on timing your smites, or not your smites, timing all of your damage and all of your abilities to get it at the very last second, so that as a team, you're dealing, 1,000 or so burst damage, as opposed to just individuals dealing, 200 damage at a time. But we are able to pick up some kills, and thanks to our strength, we are going to push into this tower. Tristana's up, and the enemy only has Kale to defend, so this is going to be a good game. But, generally you can see my goal is Nasus, and why I counter the Talon and Nocturne picks is really because Talon and Nocturne are looking to be very aggressive and get in on my team, and Nasus really works as a counter-initiate. And so with all of that damage coming out, along with the fact that I'm naturally tanky, it is going to force the enemy to retreat and not be able to pick up those easy kills.